Good morning. Lisa here. I'm having a really bad hair day today, but that's okay. I don't care too much. Welcome back to my channel. I'm getting caught up and finishing up and wrapping up and, oh, I just realized I hadn't turned my car off. And otherwise, just finishing up 31 days of Witchcraft. Man, I've got 4 prompts left and I want to wrap up. So I don't know if this is going to be long. Hopefully it won't be too terribly long. We're going to try to keep it fairly succinct, but we'll see where we end up. So prompt number 28, what belief system were you raised with and how did this affect your practice? I wasn't really properly raised with any religion in the sense that I wasn't raised in a church-going family where we went to church regularly. In my immediate family, my biological father was very Christian as well as his extended family. And so when I was exposed to them, I was exposed to more Christianity and more sort of religious-based behavior. I don't know how else to say that. But we didn't exactly go to church a lot. So because of just when I happened to be visiting with them and the timing and all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't actually raised with a whole lot. I was raised with Christianity everywhere, but it was fairly loose. And when I did go to a church, I tended to go to like a Presbyterian church. I'm just trying to remember really what my formative religious experiences were. And besides people talking about faith and religion around me, there wasn't really any kind of structured system. Like my best friend in grade school was Catholic, her family was Catholic, and so she was going through the whole Catholic process, but I didn't have any exposure to anything with that much structure. And I went to church with her a couple of times, and I also, when I was a young adult, I went to I think it was a Baptist church the once with a friend of mine. Out of curiosity, she asked me to come and I was like, sure, why not? And it was like it was like the kind of church where women did not wear pants, didn't cut their hair, and when you went to the church service, the women literally sat on one side of the church and the men sat on the other side of the church. So whatever that was, it was very intense. And that was a very hell and damnation kind of sermon. I was not a fan. The most religious experience personally that I had prior to discovering paganism was between my 11th and 12th grade year. I was sent to a camp that was Christian, and it was a really cool, well done Christian camp. That there was a lot of contemplation, and there was a lot of it was a really met you where you are, and it was the most joyful experience I'd ever had with spirituality until then. And it was really, really great. And I came back feeling really connected to spirituality, feeling really connected, feeling like I had a relationship with spirituality for the first time, and it felt amazing. And then it all came crashing down because my family life was garbage at the time, my home life. But while I was at that camp, it was really, really meaningful. And I think a lot of it was related to the time we were spending outdoors and in nature. And in a way, there was a lot there that you could look at and go, that had some pagan elements to it, but it was the closest I'd ever come to having a religious experience that felt like it worked for me. And the fact that most of it was spent outdoors isn't lost on me. I don't know that any of that really affected my spiritual path, besides the fact that being raised around Christian beliefs and Christian morals and Christian, the idea of sin and that kind of thing, when I came out of the closet as queer, I was face to face with a lot of ideas that were in conflict with who I was. And I had a lot of anger and a lot of resentment about that because it wasn't congruent to me. It didn't make sense to me that this spiritual path, this idea of Jesus and God, that these characters, I don't know, that's not the right word, but I'm pre-coffee. Archetypes, gods, deities, whatever, that they would reject me based on who I was just did not make sense to me on any level whatsoever. And yet that was what I heard. And I had a conversation with a friend who also was coming out, and they literally said, yep, I'm aware I'm going to go to hell, but this is who I am. And it broke my goddamn heart. It really, really did. That was a really awkward swear, but it broke my heart. It really broke my heart. And I was so angry that the God that I thought we both had a relationship with, the religion that I had been looking to for comfort, that it would reject and send to hell for being who we were. It didn't make sense to me, and it made me mad. It made me really, really mad. And so I went through a very angry, very bitter phase where I rejected it all, and I was like, screw that then, I'll be atheist. Like, I don't believe in anything, because if this is how deity is, then I want nothing to do with it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's not logical. It doesn't jive. It doesn't feel true. And because it didn't feel true, I was like, well, there you go. And it was like probably 6 months to a year later at most when I first encountered the idea of goddess spirituality. And in the very early stages, I was drawn to working with only goddess. And then I encountered more of a goddess god approach. And things started to kind of level out for me. But mostly I was just angry. I was angry that I saw deity as friend. I feel like there's a lot of traffic noise here, and I apologize, but I'm in a different spot. But yeah, I felt like deity was a relationship, and I felt like I was betrayed by that relationship, with this idea that I would be rejected for who I was. It just didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. That's all I can think of to say about this topic, but it just didn't make sense. When I decided to be an atheist, that lasted literally like 7 seconds, because I do believe in a higher power, and that also feels true to me. So I was like, how I believe in a higher power, I just don't believe in that one, because that one's garbage. Like, if that one thinks that I and good people with good hearts are going to go to hell for being who they are, I have nothing. It's not for me. Now, I don't think that's how all Christianity is. It's just that was what I was exposed to at that time. My feelings and thoughts on all this have evolved a lot since then. I'm not angry the way that I was. And I also still see room for Jesus and God, even in from a pagan perspective. I think there's still room for relationships with those deity-like figures. I think there's still space for that. So I'm a lot more open than I was for a long, long time. But mostly the fact that I was raised Christian and then had to deal with my sexuality, those two things combined are what ultimately pulled me away from that relationship and had me searching for something else. So that's how it affected me. I don't know that it's really... The only thing I can say about how it may have informed my practice is that with that camp and around that time, I had developed a really personal relationship with Jesus, I would say. So I would talk to him at night when I was going to bed, and it felt very... I don't know, it felt more personal. It felt more like a relationship. And I would say that experience gave me a taste of what relationship with deity could be, and informed how I would form relationship with deity moving forward. So there's that came from there. Prayer, I think, and things like that, as I've talked about before in this series, I think that prayer has a place, but I had to get past that, associating it with something that made me so sad and so disappointed, to find prayer again as even a word I would want to use. It took a long time to get there. So yeah, that's probably 9 minutes enough of babbling about that. Okay. I have a sticky note and it keeps falling. Okay. How do you feel about death, and how has this been impacted by your practice? Or how has it impacted it? Death, look at me finally writing the prompts down on the last day. Okay. Death for me, I want to say I've always believed in reincarnation, because it feels like such a deep truth that I must have always felt, but I don't know that I did. I definitely do now, and I feel like believing in reincarnation, and also believing in the idea of soul growth, and that our job here is to learn certain lessons so that we can continue to evolve and be more and more evolved spiritually as spirits. Knowing that changes the way I look at death. I look at death as an opportunity to move into a place of reflection and rest before embarking on a new life. How has that impacted my practice, though? I don't know that it directly impacts my practice. I suppose it impacts the way that I do work around grief and grieving. I know that it's important for a spirit or a soul to move on so that it can go do the work that it needs to do. But I'm bad with death, you guys. I'm not good. I have a lot of work in that area. And that's just the selfish part of me that has such a hard time dealing with loss. I'm a big griever. I don't do loss well at all. I'm almost getting emotional thinking about loss. I need to not. So yeah, I don't do loss well. I tend to grieve for a very, very long time. It tends to take me a really long time to let go. Letting go is really, really hard for me. So how has it impacted my practice? I don't know. I think in a way it gives me a sense of peace, but I don't know that it affects the way that I practice. I might not be understanding the question. Also, I may need coffee. Next prompt. How do you feel about the popularization of witchcraft or social media? I absolutely loved Heidi. Of Heidi did what or Heidi does what. I always get her. I'm really bad with channel names in the morning, I've discovered. I will try to remember to link her channel down below. She was actually worried that she would like lose subscribers over it, but I completely agree with her. Basically, and she put it really well, but I think popularization of any spiritual path is fine. If I think this is beautiful and meaningful and supportive and helpful to me, why wouldn't I want as many people as possible to have access to that? Do I get mildly annoyed when it's treated like a fad? Maybe a little bit. But honestly, I'm as an eclectic practitioner, I think my view of what a practice could look like is so open that how am I to even say that somebody's being superficial with it? And even if they are, do I actually care? Not really, as long as they're getting something out of it, right? So I'm trying to actually think of a time I felt actually annoyed by any kind of like bandwagoning or anything. And I really can't think of a time I felt really, truly annoyed. I might have had my moments of doubt where I'm like, is this just for show kind of thing? But in general, I would love as many people as possible to find any spiritual path that helps them to feel connected and helps them to feel whole, and it gives them a space to do their work and to feel a sense of healing and support. Yeah, no matter how you find it, I think that's great. I think that I shouldn't generalize. That's not fair. I believe that if you think something is beautiful and helpful and powerful, why wouldn't you want to share it with as many people as possible? And even if those people don't always come at it the way that you might think is the right way, why would you want to stop them from the journey of trying to discover that? Why would you want to hem that in and put boundaries around it? And this is just me coming from my own perspective of like, if something is beautiful and it's good, then share it. Then let as many people as want to have access to it. When it comes to concept of gatekeeping around spirituality, I really, really struggle. On one hand, I think it's important to preserve traditions that are meaningful. And so it's a complex and nuanced conversation, because I think you have a right to protect traditions that are meaningful and that you want to not get misused or misunderstood, and you don't want them to lose their potency. And so there's got to be some way to maintain the purity of something, while also, I think, allowing as many people as possible to access, enjoy, and benefit from it. And this is where it's tricky. How do you do that? How do you do that in a way that's as accessible as possible? Because accessible isn't always about money. It isn't always about physicality and location. Sometimes accessibility is also about some people can only access information at a certain level. Maybe that's all they're ready for, or maybe that's all they're capable of. And sometimes I think we lose sight of accessibility in those broader terms. And and too much gatekeeping can make things very inaccessible for a lot of people. So I don't know, it's a complicated conversation, but in general, I personally, I'm good with it. I'm good with it. Even if they get it wrong, even if it's a little wrong, even if it needs a little bit of nudging, let people figure it out. You know, let them find their way. I don't know. Maybe I have more belief in people than I should. I don't know. Very all over the place. Okay, next. Last. What is the most important lesson your craft has taught you? For me in my life, I have to say my craft has taught me that I am the one in charge of my life, that I am in charge of how happy I feel, how fulfilled I am, that if I don't like something, I not only have the power to change it, but I have the responsibility to change it. If I'm not living in alignment with my highest truth, then it's up to me and nobody else to sort that out. I think putting that responsibility on my own shoulders, I think has been a really important part of how my life has gone and how I've learned to prioritize things in my life. I think that's really important. So yeah, I would say that's it. That's the thing. Okay, let's do a wrap up and I'll wind it up. Throughout this 31 days of witchcraft, I found one thing to be true, and that is that nothing is concrete. Everything I've said, at some point in the 31 days of witchcraft, I've almost found myself questioning, or full out found myself questioning. Do I really think that? Do I really feel that? Is that true? Is that true all of the time or some of the time? And I think inquiry has been one of the most interesting things to come out of this experience for me, because there are definitely things I said on day one that I don't even fully agree with today. When I was asked as the first prompt, is your craft, and I've brought this up in a recent live chat, is your craft eclectic, spiritual, or religious? I said, oh, it's eclectic, or sorry, is it secular, spiritual, or religious? And I said it's secular, because my craft can exist without my spiritual path. I feel like the craft is the actions, it's the practice, it's the things that you do, whereas the spiritual practice also has things you do, but I felt like that could exist separately. And while I technically believe that that is true, I was coming at it from a very technical perspective. And in practice, my craft nearly always involves some element of my spirituality and my religious beliefs. And in fact, it's my spirituality, I think, that forms the framework for my ethical feelings. And so therefore my ethical feelings, which are always a part of my magical workings, are also entwined in there. So can I actually separate my craft from my spirituality? I'm not so sure I can. So from day 1 to day 31, in less than a month, I can tell you for sure, because by like day 10, I had evolved a lot on this actually. One of the things I've discovered is that anything I've said here, anything I've said throughout the 31 days of witchcraft is literally subject to change, because our feelings and our opinions, I think, on lots of things, they evolve over time as we're exposed to new information, as we're exposed to new viewpoints, as somebody says something in one of the answers to one of these prompts. This has happened to me a lot actually, and I'm like, yeah, that totally encapsulates how I feel. And if that encapsulates how I feel, then what have I said over here that isn't quite in line with how I feel? So there's been a lot of interesting like self-questioning and self-observation and inquiry that's been at the heart of this experience for me. So I really just want to say thank you to Heather for creating these prompts, for doing these prompts, and creating a discussion around a lot of really interesting topics, and bringing me into a place of thoughtfulness and self-awareness around my practice, because that has been enormously beneficial and really fun and helpful. So thank you for that. A link to Heather's channel is down below, and my playlist of 31 Days of Witchcraft is up. Upon reflection, I may decide to take some of the topics down where maybe I shared some things that I'm not sure I want to keep up forever. But this has been a really enjoyable experience, and I really, really appreciate everybody who's taken part. I've really enjoyed watching your answers. I feel like I've gotten to know some people better through this experience, and I really enjoyed it. So I think I will occasionally do these like casual car glides. Car glides? No, we're not gliding right now. This is YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Lisa's not awake. More of these car YouTube things every once in a while. We'll see. We'll see. But I've been in a place of reflection the last few days. I've been in a place of doing a lot of thinking and processing of just life stuff. And so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I hope wherever you are having a beautiful day, a beautiful afternoon or evening. And remember to like this video if you enjoyed my rambles. Share if you know people who want to watch videos about witchcraft and self-care and self-love and magic and tarot and all those good things. Remember that if you want to book a tarot reading with me, you can do that over at supportivetarot.com. And if they're, I don't know what I was going to say next. No, that's it. That's all I got, guys. I'm going to go continue with the rest of my day. I hope you have a good day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.